All right.
All right. Hey, welcome to this episode of Life on the Streets, the greatest show on earth. I'm your host, Rick,
I'm Tom.
and we've got a very special guest today, uh, a, a really well-known police chief. Well, well known to me since I've known him for such a long time, but it's all that matters is me, right?
Yeah, that's all that matters is you.
So, but before we get onto that here, it's time for our tomfoolery moment.
Otherwise known as the dumbass question of the day.
There you go. Although this one here, I think is going to surprise you.
Okay.
All
Let me
right.
see what you got.
What would you say was your biggest buffoon moment in leadership?
Oh, dude. Um,
Now, I got it like a whole list. So you've got a lot of options.
you got a list on me?
Oh, heck yes. So you have a
Um,
lot of options. So this should be like you, a kid in a candy store.
biggest buffoon moment, man. I'm not sure. I'm sure you have some of them, which I actually want to hear about. But I would say, oh man, I don't know. I don't know if it was a buffoon moment or not, but I would go back to when my guys got in the pursuit with the fire truck.
That was
And
on my list.
so Tweaker steals a fire truck
Out,
on scene,
out from under his officers.
and so they air, "Hey, we're in pursuit of a fire truck," and I'm like, "Yeah, we're gonna chase that because." I'm like, it's a fire truck. We got to chase this thing. And I'm thinking, how fast could a fire truck go? And so they're airing the pursuit and the speeds. And I'm like, was this guy like a firefighter or something before he became a tweaker? Because he's doing like 85 miles an hour
Holy cow.
in a fire truck. And all I'm envisioning is a fire engine,
Like one of those big
like
pumpers.
a big, big engine. So I go flying up and get up to where the pursuit's at, and it ends up terminating. They stop sticked it at Adams County. Stop sticks the fire truck, and I'm like, wow, they stop sticked a fire truck, and it stopped. I'm like, that's pretty amazing. And I get up there, and it's one of those small squad trucks, like a F, what is it, like a F-550 or something
Yeah,
like
Oh,
that.
yeah.
It's got a bunch of
it's
equipment on it.
it's like a brush battalion
Yeah, it
truck.
still had
Okay.
like, I don't know, something like $500,000 worth of equipment or something like that. Something.
Right.
And I'm like, and my guys got the dude in custody. I'm like, this isn't a fire truck. And they're like, yeah, it is. It says fire department on it. I'm like, that doesn't mean it's a fire truck.
And it's a
I mean,
truck,
just because
boss.
it's a truck and it says fire on it, I thought you guys were chasing like an engine. And so, long story short, then they ended up wanting to write everybody up for it and
Well, but
whatnot. So I went, saw the chief, and I'm like, hey, look, this is on me, not on my guys. I told them to chase this thing, and they did what I told them. So if you're gonna write somebody up or
so
give
what is the
discipline out, it
what
needs
is
to come to me.
so what is the buffoon moment in that?
I don't know. Maybe I should have asked what kind of fire truck it was, you know? But
It's number one on my list.
Nope,
I just
By fire truck.
I just had that in
that's
my
crazy.
brain as it just popped up, a big fire engine. I'm like, oh my God, like someone stole a fire engine.
Well, that's
Well,
So
also proof that just when you think you've seen everything, there's
mhm.
something out there that has not happened yet in your area. I
Oh
promise.
yeah.
all
Oh yeah.
right.
I guess it made a bunch of fire magazine stuff
Oh,
across the country and
we've
whatnot.
had
And
police cars stolen, but we've
my
never had a fire truck
So
stolen
yeah, so
that I
have we.
know of.
We've had the same thing.
yeah.
But all right, well, at least that was good. That was good.
Yeah.
That was really good. So we have Chris Noeller, Police Chief Chris Noeller, and he's kind of got some amazing stuff that goes on. So before we go into that, I'm going to tell you that Chris is probably one of the most pro police chiefs I've ever met. He is an advocate for officers, not just in our state but nationwide. I mean, he is definitely committed to the cause. So I'm honored to have him on the show.
For sure.
Chris, talk about yourself.
There's not much to talk about. I've been doing the job about 33 years as a law enforcement officer, been chief for a little over 4.5 years, counting the time I was the interim chief. Been in Pueblo for 29 years as a cop. Love it. It's a great community. It's an exciting place to work. It's got just about everything that a real police wants. You've got real crime to work with. You've got the tools to do it here, and we've got a great group of people that help keep this community safe. So, very honored to be the chief here at the Pueblo Police Department.
Yeah,
Nice.
absolutely. So let's just sort of dive into this, right? So, but before we go into what I really want to talk about, so since I mean you moved up the ranks, so leadership is not it's not a mystery to you, right?
Yeah.
So what do you think are
Still mysterious. I don't know. It may not be a mystery, but
well well now you're starting to make me think it was a mystery how you got there.
right. Well,
So
I tell everybody all the time, even a broke cock's right twice a day.
That's right.
so
Well, you should probably say that you guys used to work together at some
well
point.
we've
You've known each other for a long time,
we have we've
and that
known each other.
you're not just giving, a random police chief a bunch of garbage.
No, I've
You know,
known
you're
I've
not
known
you're not
Chris.
treating him the way you're treating him because you just met.
I've known Chris for
Okay.
33 years, and
Okay,
I
amazing.
will tell you, um, everything I say about Chris, even the bad stuff, is heartfelt.
Thanks,
So,
Rick.
Okay.
so in your time moving up through the ranks, from being just and I say just, and I didn't mean to say it that way, but being from sort of an informal leader all the way up through, being a formal, legitimate leadership roles throughout your career, right?
Yeah.
What do you think has made you who you are today?
I mean, honestly, if you want to go real deep, my dad has made me the man that I am today. I'm very proud to be his son. He's was a good man, or is a good man. Was in the Air Force as a enlisted guy, and I learned a lot about leadership from him. But within law enforcement, I think honestly, what's made me the leader I am today, and some people will judge whether that's good or bad besides me, but has been the other leaders that I've seen. Obviously, hopefully, you model behavior that you think is good, and you don't model the behavior you see that is not. Um, but I unfortunately am a Irish German, thick-headed guy, and a lot of my leadership journey has been defined by mistakes that I've made. Um, I have not always, I've not always been a good leader, to be perfectly honest with you. And I think I think more leaders ought to reflect on their leadership journey, and see where they have failed. Because, when I first started going to trainings about leadership, and you would hear all these guys stand up in front of you and tell all these stories about how great they were, and I don't think they meant it to be that way. I started thinking, well, gee whiz, I must really be a screw up, because just yesterday I was talking to one of my officers and said something that they totally offended them, or totally made them mad, or was insensitive, or whatever. And this guy's up here, and I've not heard one time this sergeant or captain or chief or whoever talk about where they failed, or how they, had something blow up in their face that they didn't see coming, and it was caused by them, not by other people. And so for a while, I really struggled, to be honest with you, Rick, as far as whether I was a good leader or not, because I'm seeing all this stuff. And it took a couple of other people that I finally had some good peers, that I was able to talk with, that were like, "No, dude, we all do that. You need to stop being so tough on yourself. You need to learn. You need to be tough enough on yourself that you don't ignore what you did, and you change how you are. But you can't live life in the rearview mirror." And so I think those mistakes help forge me into being the leader that I am. I still make mistakes. There's a couple of officers that have left our department that, quite honestly, trash me on podcasts for things that I've done. I own some of that, 100%, and some of it you don't. Everybody's perspective is not always based in reality, including mine. Um,
Exactly.
but
I like that.
but I think that's what I've tried to do. I've tried to be humble, as a leader, and realize that you're not always the smartest guy in the room. One thing that I generally, and it's not always the case, but generally I'm the last one to speak in a room. And the reason is because I've learned, especially as a chief, when you walk in a room and say, "Hey, we need to form a unit to do this," Well, there may have been a better idea, and you're never going to hear it because now they're just focused on, and not because they don't like your idea, but that's the only idea now. So the way to do it I've found is we've got this problem. How are we going to fix it? And then you just shut up and you let people talk. And a lot of times, what's interesting is a lot of times your idea that you may have already conceived is the one that ends up percolating to the top through somebody else. And then the cool thing is I think they have a lot more buy-in in that idea. Um, and you know, it's a great way that maybe it's similar to your idea that you had when you walked into because I mean, I'm a human being. I see a problem and in my mind, I've got a solution. I think we're all that way. We're type A personalities. I've never seen a problem that I can't give you a solution to. It may not be the right one sometimes, but I can give you a solution. So yeah, right. You know, I think that that's the key to I think my leadership journey, you know, I still, one of the things that I really didn't understand when I got to the chief level is that, you know, well, let me back up a little bit. When I was a patrolman, I was a bit of, there's a term out there called goon. And I was a bit of that guy. I thought I knew everything about everything. I thought that the sergeants who wouldn't let me do this were stupid. They don't know what they're doing. I was out there and I was getting into stuff. I was getting into trouble. Yeah, I know, Rick. I remember. And I might have got some of that from you, but you know,
Probably.
I was in trouble all the time as a young cop, and was very fortunate to be a young cop in those days because we didn't live in a zero defect world like we do now.
Mm.
Yeah.
And I was allowed to learn from my mistakes. It took me a while. For the longest time, I didn't think I was the one with the problem. I thought it was everybody else. That they were out to get me. They were just picking on me. You know, we've all seen it. You either
Yeah.
seen it or you've done it yourself. That attitude.
Well, and I
And
think we've all, anybody who wants to be honest has done it themselves, you know?
I would agree.
So, and I mean, I know I've had probably more failures than successes, but you know what?
Yeah.
That's reality.
Right.
You know, it's hard to be success, right?
Yeah.
To actually be successful. You know, I think that learning, which is what you're doing, I mean, it's science, it's trial and error, right? And
Yeah.
science gets things wrong more than they ever get things right because once they get it right, they stop,
Right.
right?
Right.
So, you know, so
But
it's
but so what's kind of funny is, you know, all those times me and my buddies would be sitting car to car after we got yelled at or got written up or whatever, and man, they never promote real chiefs or real cops to chief. They never make a real cop chief. Um, and I've, you know, whatever. So I'll be honest with you, some of my mistakes are why they don't make real cops chiefs because you know, I react like a cop. When you do
Mm.
stupid, can I say it on this?
you
Yeah.
can say
Okay.
it.
Yeah.
All
Say
right.
anything you
When
want.
This
you
is
do stupid
unedited.
shit, I'm gonna tell you you're doing stupid shit. Stop. I'm not gonna go, hey, you know, we had a training the other day and I thought we covered this pretty well, but maybe we didn't. Then the next time, could you not do that again? No, I'm gonna say, hey, stop doing stupid shit.
Hmm.
Well, people don't like being told that by the chief, and that caused me a lot of heartache with HR. You know, and so I learned again through trial and error. And you know, you have to realize, and the whole point of this story was I didn't realize that once I became chief for sure, and I think it started when I became deputy chief, you're no longer one of the guys. They want a guy who's chief, who's one of the guys, but they don't want a guy who's chief, who's one of the guys.
Right.
Uh, because if
Right.
they did, they would take that, hey, don't do stupid shit, and they'd be like, all right, okay, I shouldn't do stupid shit.
Hmm.
We call it safety rule number 5 on the range: don't do stupid shit. Um, and you know, I mean, it's probably some of the best advice you could ever get. But anyway, I also so I lucked out. I voluntarily transferred off of Graves to go to days because I at some point I could see the writing on the wall, and it wasn't going to be good for Patrolman Noeller. So I went to days and was on day shift for about 6 to 8 months. I stayed out of trouble. I started making good decisions. Had one of the captains who was over internal affairs at the time coming. I was doing a crime scene sketch. We had a room we did crime scene sketches in back in the old days when he actually sketched it. And he walked into that room and saw me sitting there and he goes, "What are you doing?" I said, "Oh, I'm working on the crime scene sketch for this thing." He goes, "Hey, I've not seen your name in a long time, and that's a good thing. You're doing good stuff." And he just walked off. And I thought, wow, that's cool. And he was one of the guys that, oh, he's out to get me. Well, no, clearly he wasn't. Um,
Right.
so a few months later, and this is where I remember sitting in Louisville having a conversation with you, and you always wanted to be a narc. And I told you I never wanted to be a narc. Well, never say never. NARC position comes open. I put in for it. I was fortunate and lucky, given the alternatives that I put in for it at that time and got into narcotics. Worked street level narcotics for about 2.5 years. Continued to stay out of trouble, but I still had a bit of a chip on my shoulder. The DEA task force came open. I applied. My buddy Charlie was asked to do it before me, but he was having a young kid, so he passed on it. So my reputation was still causing me issues, is the moral of that story. So I lucked out again and was the only person in the unit that was interested in doing it. So I got to go do it. Spent 8 years on that task force, and a few years later, Charlie ends up coming up to the task force too. And I remember one day, and this changed my entire career. This conversation. I'm sitting there complaining about our department. And I remember reaching out to you, Rick, one time about our SWAT training and,
Yes.
and how we didn't SWAT train. And I'm sitting and that was when I was on the task force. And I'm sitting there complaining about how we don't train, how our department's this, that, and the other thing. And Charlie just turns around and looks at me and goes, "You know what, Chris? I'm tired of listening to you freaking run our department down. If you don't have anything good to say, shut the F up." And me and Charlie went to high school together. We've been friends for years. And I was like, F you. And I went home and I was all put out. He's such an asshole. Why? And then I got to thinking that night. I sat there and I was all mad. I was just pouting on my couch. Um, TV was on, but I wasn't watching it. And I got to thinking, you know what? He's 100% right. Here I am. I have the best job I have ever had to this day. I was traveling all over the country doing dope cases, which turns out I loved. Um, and we were doing some massive cases against some pretty good cartel leadership down in Mexico. And over time, I had the best vehicle because at the time, our fleet at our department was horrible. I had a brand new car I think it was every year or every 2 years they rented them. Um, I got to travel around the country. I was probably at the time the only officers that were doing that were us on the task force. And there I am complaining about the whole thing. So I came back to work. I told Charlie years later that this, I didn't tell him right away that he was
Of
right.
course not.
Because
Of
I am
course
an
not.
Irish German thick-headed dude. Um, so the few years later, I stopped not right away, but I worked on trying not to complain and not being that negative cancer that I had allowed myself to become. Because that's not how I was raised to be. That's not how I was in Louisville. It just I allowed it to happen. And I'm sure we'll talk about it later. It's choices.
Yes.
Um, but so another guy tests for sergeant, and I'm like, man, I am never working for that guy. Never. So I started taking the sergeant's test because I was like, man, I don't know. This is gravy. I love this job, but at any moment it could end. And if I go back there, I want zero chance that I'm going to work for this guy. So I ended up taking the sergeant's test. I had to take it 3 different times. Finally get promoted in 2011 and came back to the department. Um, Fast forward, I ended up going and working in the traffic unit, and this is where young guys need to think about their career. I was a goon on the street, so to say. I was a freaking narc task force officer. I was on the SWAT team. I was a sniper. All the tip of the spear stuff, right? So traffic makes perfect sense. That's also the tip of the spear, right? It's part of the spear, absolutely, but it's not the part that I usually was trying to be at. But what I thought was, I never wanted to promote until I made sergeant. I never even thought about promoting. I thought I'd be lucky with my career the way it was if I retired at corporal. Um, so I thought, man, captain wouldn't be too bad. That'd be all right to retire as a captain. I mean, so I thought, well, how can I do this? All of a sudden, the traffic unit comes open. Well, I got to thinking the traffic guy gets to go meet with the chief every time that he does a parade permit. He has to meet with the chief and explain the route, go over the plan, all that stuff. They also manage grants. So I'm going to learn a little bit about how to run a budget at a police department. I'm also going to learn how to apply for grants and what's required. So this will help me if I want to be a captain. Um, Take the test for the captain a couple of years later. I think I was a sergeant for 2.5 years. Three, it was about 3 years, I guess. Not as long as I look in looking back, not as long as I wish I was a sergeant because that's a great job. And you have a lot more influence than you think you do. But take the captain's test. I was actually fifth out of five on the captain's list. I was the second captain promoted. And I'm telling you right now, if I hadn't taken that traffic job and had the FaceTime that I had with the chief and had the grant stuff, I'm not sure that would have been the case. So I go to graveyards. I loved it. As a graveyard watch commander, loved it. No brass around. It was my city from 10 p.m. until 6 in the morning, and it was fun. I was back with the guys out on the street. We were super proactive, doing all kinds of cool stuff. And then deputy chief position comes available, and I was like, there was this guy that I didn't want to work for, that was a captain that was putting in for it, and I thought, nah, I'm not letting that happen. So I put in for it. Like I said, I broke clocks right twice a day, and I made DC. And then it wasn't until I made DC that the idea of even becoming chief, even the possibility even became a thought. And then our former chief, who was a great man, I learned a lot from him as well on my leadership journey. He retired, told us he was retiring, and I would have done it anyway, but there was that same captain wanted to be chief, and I was like, no, not on my watch. Not without me at least trying.
Right.
And luckily I was selected, and I've been the chief for a little over 4.5 years. And I tell that story because I think it's important for young officers to hear that. Um, Number one, I'm just another cop, man. I just happen to have a different role. I put my pants on the same way my cops do. I feel um, not in the same way that they do, but I feel the same frustrations they do. When they get hurt, it hurts me personally. And I'm also a guy who has not been just some shining rock star through my entire career. I was a hard worker. I was a complainer. I was disgruntled. I thought people were out to get me. Luckily, the hard worker stayed with me, and I was able to shed the other stuff. Because if you want to get anywhere in an organization, you cannot be a cancer, because you're not going to have the opportunity to go anywhere. I won't promote a cancer. I won't select a cancer to be in a specialized unit because it's just not what you want.
Right.
And I
Right.
wish I would have known that. I wish I would have realized that a little bit sooner. It took me about, I don't know, probably about ten years to figure that out. And that's a long, painful ride. Long, painful ride.
But you know what? That's the thing. And I'll tell you, you said so many things in there that I think is important for younger officers to understand. First of all, and you kind of said it, but you didn't say it in the way that it always resonates with me is you're responsible for your own happiness.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. There's no contract between you and the agency that you're going to be happy. You
Right.
make that happen, whatever that looks like, but you make that happen. You're also responsible for your own, you know, unhappiness. And you spoke to that. I mean, you you create these issues in your head, and it's a lesson that we all have to learn. I learned it. Tom learned it. Right.
Mhm.
Um, and I'll be honest with you. Having retired as a sergeant, you know, I have no regrets because it wasn't that I wouldn't have been a good executive leadership person, right? You
Right.
know, going to a lieutenant commander or whatever, right? Um, it wasn't that at all. Is you made decisions and I made decisions and Tom made decisions, but I stayed where I was one, happiest, two, felt I made the biggest contribution because you said it, but sergeants make such a huge contribution to the organization, and I don't think that the higher you go, the less you do. I think it's all a matter of perspective, right? And what was important for me was staying connected with my guys, right? With my people, not just guys, but guys and gals, but staying connected with my people. Because you said it right there. Officers think they want one of their own to, be chief, but that's not the reality, right? I mean, you have there comes you have to distance yourself sometimes, right? From certain things when the higher you go up the chain. Would you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Like when I was a sergeant or an officer, we had the parties. Man, I was there the
Mm.
whole time almost. As a chief, if I'm invited, I might show up there for an hour, have a drink, and then I'm gone. Because nobody wants the chief hanging out at the party. I
Well,
mean,
and it's
come on,
bad. What
it's like
happens
a
if
bite in your,
something's there?
what's
Yeah,
that?
What
that's
happens if
true.
you're there and something happens, right?
Yeah.
Now you've really it's gone from
No.
not good to really not good,
Right.
right? And it puts you as the leader in such a bad position, right?
Oh,
Because
for
now
sure.
there's no separation there, right? You were there, you
Right.
either witnessed it, so you're now either complicit or you're corrupt, correct?
Oh, yeah. It's
It's one of those things, and I mean, and officers, you have to make a decision. I saw this, I know the facts, right? You kind of tied my hands here,
yeah.
so, and we've seen this time and time again. Go ahead, Tom.
Well, I was going to say, I think, like I said, I think the biggest influence that anybody has is probably at the sergeant's level,
Oh, for sure.
when it comes to organizations. And I
And,
think
and
that,
and they can make or break an organization.
yes,
Yes.
absolutely they can. I think that, because, if you, like you said, if you have that sergeant that's a cancer, then he's probably going to transfer that down to his people and they're going to become cancers too. Or just even if he has a negative attitude about the department and whatnot, sometimes you got to keep that stuff to yourself as a sergeant, even though you're like, this is so aggravating on what's going on right now or whatever. But like I used to tell my guys, like, we're going to go out and we're going to have fun today. We're going to have a good time in our little world because as it stands right now, we're the ones on the street. We're running the street. It's our city right now. So we're going to take care of it and we're going to have some fun in our little world. Everything else, you guys let me worry about that. I'm the buffer between command staff and you guys. So
Right.
I will take care of whatever issues are coming up. You guys don't worry about that. If you want to bring them to me, bring them to me. I'll take them to the command staff and deal with it. Don't run around, spewing hate or anything like that.
Right.
That's my job to do. Well, not spew the hate, but good,
As long as you're
at
spewing it
least, at
uphill,
least,
I
yeah,
spew
was
it
at least
uphill.
throw it, at
I'm
least
just
throw
Yeah,
it
yeah.
uphill
I'm
Yeah.
just
and tell
sitting there
somebody.
thinking to myself, you heard that, right?
I came out
You,
totally wrong.
you
You know what
can
I
you
meant.
can spew all the hatred uphill you want. That's what I always say.
Yeah, exactly.
It's
You
the
know,
downhill that is where it's bad.
Yeah.
so that conversation that you had, right? So was that your aha moment? Was that when the light just came on?
With
Oh,
Charlie,
yeah.
yeah, oh, 100%, 100%. Now, again, it was more like a fluorescent light coming on. It just kind of flickered for a little bit and then it took shape. It wasn't like an immediate, I'm not an LED light. I'm more of a fluorescent light. But yeah, no, 100%. It changed. It truly changed the trajectory of my career. And this is where, I mean, and I've said it internally in our department, you know, peers don't understand how much influence they have over one another, and it can be, it's like the force. It can be used for good or bad. The for Charlie, because a lot of people throughout my career listened to the same sense, and he listened to it for a long time too, because I mean, man, we hung out every weekend. We went on vacations together. And so he had, it ain't the first time he heard it. So it still took him a long time to be finally like, you know what? Shut the F up. And that's exactly how he started the conversation. Chris, shut the F up. And I was like, whoa, okay, what's going on now? I was getting a little bit torqued, but absolutely.
Damn, Phil, what's with all the negativity, the hostilities?
Right, right. I was like, absolutely. That's the thing that changed my life as far as professionally, and I think to some extent personally as well. And so I owe him a great debt of gratitude. The and you mentioned it earlier. You know, your happiness is yours, and your unhappiness is yours. Because I talk about it when I used to teach leadership in the academy after this happened. And I talked about, you know, there's certain things that I promised the city when they hired me. I promised them I would work 40 hours a day or 40 hours a week for 40 hours of pay. Do you think I always worked 40 hours a week? Worked 40 hours a week? Come on.
Well, I
There's no
know
way.
you. I
No,
know
we
you,
park
and I'm
car to
going to say
car. I mean, how
no.
long do you park? How long did you guys park car to car talking? Were you
Oh,
working?
yeah.
No. Oh, we were stopping crime because they could see our, oh, bullshit. We were bullshitting and we weren't doing nothing else. So I guarantee you, I failed the city on that. I promised that I would obey the policies of the city of Pueblo. Do you think I always did that? I just told you I didn't. I was in trouble. I don't know how many times.
Right.
I
Yeah.
promised that I would not abuse my sick leave, that I would work, according to the rules. Do you think I always did that? No, I used sick leave when I wasn't sick. I'm not an angel. Um, what did the city promise me? Those were the only things I think the city asked from me. Those things. City promised me that they would give me a paycheck at the end of every month for the month for a certain amount of money. Plus, if I worked extra, they would pay me even more. That every month for the last 30 years, I have received my check. Not, I'm fortunate because some people have had errors. I've never had an error on my check, not one time. They promised me that they would give me benefits. Every time I've gone to the doctor, I've not yet had to fight with the insurance company. I'm fortunate. Some of our officers have had to, but they still have treatment. Still get the treatment that they're supposed to get, hopefully, even after they have to fight for it. They promised me that they would abide by the union contract. Did they always? No, but there was a grievance process if they didn't. And I never had to grieve the city because just because it was pretty evident what I had done. There was no point in it. Um, but some people have, and they got their punishment or whatever overturned, or they got paid overtime that they should have got that they didn't. So the city still, at the end of the day, did what was right. And then they promised me that I would have an opportunity to work in the most exciting, awesome career field that is imaginable on this planet. And they lived up to every one of the expectations. Nowhere in there did it say you would have a nice car. Nowhere in there did it say you would have Christmas off. Nowhere in there did it say that you were going to make you happy every day you come to work. We're going to give you a lollipop and pat you on the back and tell you how awesome you are. None of that shit. But the only person out of the two people that signed that contract that didn't live up to their end was me. And it took me a while to figure that out. And that's how I explained it to our new recruits, or when I was teaching it. The as much as we get mad at our community, or not our community, our organizations, 99% of the time, even when we're mad at them, even when they aren't treating us the way they ought to, they still have not violated what they promised us when we hired them.
I
99% of the
love
time.
that perspective. I love how you've put that, because you know what? That is that is so true. And it's something that none of us really ever think about in the moment, right? I mean,
Right.
a lot of this, maybe if we're lucky, we'll figure that out in hindsight, but I love how so that would be your advice to young officers, right?
Yeah.
What
Just
would be
remember the
your advice
contract.
to current leaders? What is your advice?
Well, a couple of things. I think number one, we as leaders in law enforcement need to stop sitting back and just going with the narrative. Um, when I'm and there's a lot of things that I do well and a lot of things I don't do well. And if you Google me, you'll find out both. Um, I'm not perfect. I'm not the best leader. I'm not the worst leader. I'm just a leader. But one thing I have seen over time is law enforcement leaders, and it is hard because you're appointed, you're not elected. But we can no longer sit back and just to say, yeah, we'll do better, when there's no way to do better. And I'm not saying I'm not saying across the board that that's true, but when you take away our ability to enforce laws, when you take away our ability to, do the things that you take the tools away from us to do the job, and then you want to come at us for not doing the job. It's about time that more leaders stand up and say that's bullshit. We can't do that. And I have no problem accepting accountability where we and my department have failed. And it's not we when I talk about it, it's I. I am the face of the organization. When we fail, it's on me. Now we will figure out how not to do that again, but it is my failure.
Right.
And so therefore, we're going through this in our community right now about, broken windows. Well, and I'm telling people, your broken windows are not my problem. They, to the extent that we need to try to track down who did it and maybe get a charge on that person, absolutely, that's our job. But crime prevention is not the police. Crime prevention is the owner of their property doing a part, criminal justice system doing a part, and the police doing a part. Right now, the criminal justice system isn't working worth a crap in Colorado. Um, and so you can either come at us about your windows being broken, or you can take steps to try to prevent your windows from being broken. Shutters. Nobody wants to hear about shutters because, oh, it makes the town look horrible. Okay, I don't know, the broken windows look much better, but if you expect us to put a cop on all four sides of every block to prevent windows from being broken, it's just not even fully staffed. That's not even possible.
Right.
Um, you want us to prevent your windows from being broken, do something yourself about it, and then go fight up in Denver, the legislators who are making it next to impossible to put those people that are doing that in jail. You got to break a $2,000 window to even have the remotest possibility of going to jail,
Mhm.
in this state. And it's just absolutely ridiculous. And that's what leaders need to do, is to stop sitting back and just watching this stuff happen. So that's one. Number two is don't be afraid to admit you fail at times, especially when you're looking inside the building. And I the list of failures for Chris Noeller is long and distinguished. And I'm probably gonna make one or two today. Um, that's not my goal, but it's just the reality of the world we live in. We are in a high pressure, zero defect era, and it puts pressure on everybody, and it causes leaders to make poor decisions sometimes. And I think that finally, and it took me a while to figure this out. If you knew my entire family story, the fact that I have almost no feelings would not surprise you. So I am very weak in the area of empathy at times. It's just it's not something I'm proud of. It just is true. So if that's you as a leader, you need to surround yourself with people who aren't, because they can help you. Even if you don't feel the empathetic things, it will help you look and treat your people in a more empathetic way. Um, and in this day and age, when I was a cop, nobody cared how I felt. Nobody cared, that we got shot at the night before. Nobody cared that I mean, and it not because they're bad people. It's just how it was. That's not the era of policing anymore. But unfortunately, at times, that's the mindset that I have. So some of my failures have been in that regard. So I think that is important too. And what I would say is, as a sergeant, I don't. Not every leader maybe sets up an environment like this, but it's been my goal as chief. And again, goals are great, but you don't always succeed at reaching your goals. Is to set up an environment where people can bring ideas up, and leadership at lower levels that don't take advantage of an environment like that or do it anyway are really cheating themselves. I had a sergeant one time tell me that his job was to protect his people. And okay, I mean, I get the idea. I think that there's some truth to that for sure. But that sergeant had all these issues with how I handled some stuff, and never one time did he come talk to me. Not once. Not once. And that, how are you protecting your people if you don't have the moral courage to come and talk to the leadership that you think is wronging them?
So let
And
me
we
ask you a
try
question on
better.
that.
Yeah.
Jim, I don't mean to interrupt you, but let me ask
No.
you a question on that. So you just said if you don't have the moral courage, right?
Yep.
And I don't disagree with that. What I see in leadership, and I want your opinion on this, and I want your opinion on this, okay? Sometimes it's not a lack of moral courage. I mean, morality is shaped by social norms, right? So culture and all that stuff, right? So, okay, I stay with, but I look at it as a lack of leadership courage, right? Administrative courage.
Yeah.
Um, that's not shaped by social norms. That's
Sure.
shaped by that the organization itself, right? If I want
Right.
to be a leader, okay, then I got to have enough administrative courage to one come to you as a chief, right? And say this is where I see the deficiencies and I got to bring a solution too. I can't bitch
Right.
all the time and not have a solution.
Right.
But I also have to be able to have administrative courage to send that down the line too, right? I mean, the guys that I work for, yeah, I want them to look up to me. I want them to respect me. I want them to follow me. But that doesn't happen if I don't hold them accountable. And that's one of the
Yes.
things that I've seen in leadership is we try to be friends with our subordinates to a point where, there's and servant leadership, and having a background in leadership. You have a background in leadership, and I have a background in leadership, and Tom has a background in leadership. But having a master's in leadership, you have a master's, right? Is we talk about servant leadership, and people take that servant leadership in the wrong direction. Servant leadership isn't protecting my guys,
Right.
right? It's making them better. And how do I do that? It's by holding them accountable and allowing them to improve. And how do
Right.
they improve? I got to give them that feedback. And if I never give them negative feedback, if I always run, I'm here to protect you, I'm doing them such a disservice. And
Yeah.
and I think that's what you're saying, right?
Yeah, 100%. I think leadership, courage would be a good way. What I really wanted to say was testicular fortitude. Um, but
There you go.
you got to have it. And you mentioned something that I wanted to respond to, and I think in the military they have this thing what's called command climate. And my goal as a leader at whatever rank I'm at, including as chief, is to set a command climate where when you're about to do something, there's no doubt what Sergeant Noeller or Captain Noeller or Deputy Chief Noeller or Chief Noeller is going to say or think or do about this. And that's how you protect your people. And you do that by having conversations with them, by setting expectations, and by enforcing those expectations. You know, we were just talking about this as a leadership group today because of some issues that we've seen, and what I see happens sometimes in some groups, and in general, not necessarily at my department, but where when the sergeant's there, people act a certain way, or when the captain's there, or the deputy chief, or whatever's there, they act a certain way. But when that guy's because of the way our scheduling is in law enforcement, your sergeant may not always be there when you're working, or your captain he works 5 days and you work four, so there's going to be rotation where you're not there when the captain's there. Well, in some scenarios, what you see is when that captain is gone, now the crews are doing what they want to do instead of what the captain wants to do. And then
Right.
you'll see in some groups, though, what you'll see is that captain isn't there, and you would never know. You would never know that that captain was gone because the stuff is run that way because they know when he comes back, if he finds out they did something different, there's going to be heck to pay. Because he set those expectations, he's enforced those expectations. And the thing that everybody freaks out about when you as a chief talk about enforcement or accountability is that all you want to do is write people up. Man, 99% of all problems in law enforcement can be solved with no paper, no
Mhm.
paper. But still accountability is involved because you're in that sergeant's office. And this is where sergeants make or break an organization. Because I, as a chief, can say all day long, and I'm just going to make up a stupid thing. You will back your
Right.
cars into every parking space. I would never make that rule just to be clear, but let's just say for the sake of argument that I did. What do you think the odds are that me saying abracadabra, you will always back into a parking space, that's really what's going to happen?
Yeah, it's
Do
very
you think
rare.
my captains are going to be able to get everybody? No, who is going to be able to make everybody do that is the sergeant.
Mhm.
And if the sergeants don't care, or they don't have the leadership courage like you're talking about because they want to be friends, that's never going to happen. And what's sad is a lot of the little things that we ask our sergeants to enforce are actually not little things, they're big things. I heard a Air Force lieutenant talk about why she was explaining, it was a female captain, I think, actually in the Air Force, was on a TED talk explaining to this group how she tells her she was running an ROTC thing or Officers Candidate School or something. How she convinces the candidates that folding their socks a certain way is important. And she said, "Do you really think we care how you fold your socks?" No. The reason why is because the guy who was in charge of this OCS was a B-2 pilot, and they fly 20-hour missions because they don't land anywhere but in America. And you have to have attention to detail to be up in an airplane for 20 hours uh, uh, doing whatever they do. I wasn't a pilot, but and it's not about the sock, but the sock is how you teach attention to detail. It's the same thing with many of our rules that we have in the organization. You know, your beard, we allow beards. I'm not a huge fan, but I agreed to it. It's the military man in me. I'm not a big fan of beards in uniform, but we do it. Yeah, it can only be a certain length. All right. And it should only be a certain length. But
Mhm.
I promise you right now, if I went downstairs with a ruler, there'd be some sergeants who would have people with the beard that's perfect. And there'd be other sergeants who don't. And not one time has that sergeant said anything to anybody. Now, is that important? It could be if you're putting a gas mask on because we use the heck out of gas when we have barricaded suspects. And if you're a patrolman out on the outer perimeter catching that gas, it could be important. But it also is a uniform appearance.
Right.
It is
Mhm.
how we as the Pueblo Police Department look. We don't allow 3/4 inch beards. We allow 1/2 inch beards.
It's the understanding the why
Yeah,
that's important, and that's where I think a lot of us fail. Right? Is we tell them the what, but we never tell them the why.
and that is a great point, and that's something else that leaders, especially chiefs, have to be able to do is to explain the why. Because if I can't tell you why I'm asking you to do something, then quite frankly, why the heck am I asking you to do it?
Mhm.
Yeah.
You
And I'm
know,
not talking rationalization. I'm talking about
right,
facts. I'm talking about hard knowledge. This is why we are asking this. Okay. And at the end of the day, this is what the result needs to be. And this is the why. Because it does this. Because we need this.
right,
Because it creates that. Right.
right, 100%.
Well,
So you got to be able to do that. Go
and
ahead,
that
Tom.
goes back to in my opinion, that goes back to to having the as Chris put it, the testicular fortitude
I'm
to
adapting that. So
to to
adopting.
because
Instead of
in my opinion, whether you're a sergeant or a captain or basically anybody, well, up to the chief as well, because he still has a boss.
Right,
But when we talked about holding your people accountable for things and setting expectations and that kind of stuff, I think as a leader, you should still set expectations for your higher chain of command. And you need to be able to hold them accountable for the things that they've put out, that they've said and whatnot. And the why comes into that. Like if I'm told to do something or I was told to do something and I didn't understand the why, then I would say, I need to know the why. Like you need to tell me the why we're doing this.
yep,
I mean, you know that. I've asked you why tons of times on SWAT stuff. and so it's you have to have that
And I've
ability
had
to
to
do that.
repeat it
Did
many
you just tell
times.
him kick the door? I'll tell you later.
Well, you know what? With Tom, you
No,
can't
it
do
was
that because Tom's already kicking the door.
yeah,
The
Ah,
why is
okay.
why you're not doing that.
yeah.
You
Yeah, it
know,
was this is why we're not doing all the stuff you normally do.
Okay.
So
so
this is why.
so, I mean,
Okay.
I know
Right.
Tom enough to be able to say this is why we're not doing it. Not,
Right.
I know the why you're doing it. This is the why it's not a good idea. But
Right.
And I
Right.
also and
but though, to your point though, the issue is the why needs to come first. If you're only filling him in on the why after you get pushback, you've already lost ground with these people.
I agree. I
and
agree.
that's and I think it comes back to like what you said about the command climate, right? You have to create that climate in your organization where people aren't afraid to come to you with stuff. They're not afraid to go to their next level of in the chain
Right.
and say something. And I mean, as the chief, and I've seen this too, where the chief might actually be the guy that says, "Hey, if you got a problem, come to me and talk to me about it." But your commander or your captain or whatever is not of the same frame of mind, and then you go talk to the chief and the commander finds out, and now you're in the
Well,
commander's
that's
office
that
being yelled at.
usurping the chain of command, and I think chain of command is very important. I
It
mean,
But it,
is.
if I'm a chief, and of course, if I'm a chief, then you have really hit a low. Okay, you have
I don't know if that's true.
really exhausted your options. Okay. But but if I'm your chief, right? But if I'm the chief and I have this open door, I have an open door policy, right? That says, come talk to me. And I'm going to ask you in a minute, Tom, Chris, what you think of this. I, I don't want you coming to talk to me if those above you in the chain of command aren't already aware that you're going to talk to me.
I would agree with that. And I mean, going back to what Tom said a minute ago, and this has been one of my failures. I've had and I mean it. I mean, the entire time I've been a boss, I have had the attitude that I want people to come to me if they don't like something that I'm doing. But I will be honest with you, I'm a human being. I have Irish blood and my face turns red when I get mad. I can't make it stop. So people will come to me and I'm a big guy. I'm 55 and fat. I don't know why, but I have a reputation for being intimidating. I think it's because uh, I'm big. I'm not muscular big. I'm just big. Yeah, but I have a voice I think that is a little bit gruffer and deeper, and I'm not afraid to use my voice when I want people's attention. And so I think at times, and it would be fair to say, maybe even for this sergeant that I was talking about, that at times I have not always presented myself as a person that would actually let you come talk to me, and that's a failure of my part, for sure. And
That
I can see
that's
easily how, as a chief, even when you want people to do that, and somebody comes to you and look, I mean, we're human. You come to me with a stupid idea, and I get this kind of like, what the fuck look on my face. Um, it can put people off, but man, we love in law enforcement to eat our own.
yeah,
Mhm.
We
yeah,
do.
that
We
is
love to
so
eat our
true.
own. We don't
That is
show
so true.
grace to one another. And that's one thing that as a chief I've tried over the last 3 or 4 years to become better at is showing grace to people when they do things, and I'm like, what the? Because I don't think anybody in any department except maybe some really bizarre people come to work and say, I'm going to try to make everybody's life miserable today.
Yeah.
I maybe the cancers do, because I think when I was that, I certainly I didn't wake up and go, gee whiz, I'm gonna see how many people I can make miserable today. But I certainly didn't try not to.
Mhm.
But I think, and I think people could also probably, it would be helpful for the entire organization if officers showed some grace to their chief when they didn't perform the way they thought they should. I'm not saying you got to tolerate it. I'm not saying that you got to make excuses for it, but Chiefs have bad days too. We have arguments with our spouses before we come to work too. We have, expectations from our boss that maybe we're not meeting, not because of any fault of anybody else, but because of our own performance issues. And so we're getting heat from our boss or getting heat from other places. And sometimes, as human beings do, we misplace our reaction to those stressors.
Yeah, I think
Um,
that you make such a powerful point here, Chris. And I'm going to tell you that as an officer and as a sergeant, there were so many times that I forgot that, or I'd never
we all
considered
do.
that, and we all do that. And I was guilty of you talk about being unapproachable, and Tom will attest to this. I had a lot of officers who thought I was scary and unapproachable,
And just an asshole.
or just an asshole. Absolutely.
Yeah, I've been accused of that too.
Yeah. Who hasn't, right?
But,
I mean, if you haven't, then you're probably doing something wrong,
yeah,
right? But if it happens too much, you're probably doing something wrong. And I
right.
recognized that. And it took people around me, guys like Tom and stuff, to pull me aside and say, dude, do you understand how people who know you love you, but people who are just getting to know you don't. And
Right.
that's something that is important to have people do for you, right? Um,
100%.
but I think the other side to that, though, is as a leader, as a sergeant, as a chief, and every rank in between, people need to understand that you answer to, even as a chief, you have a boss. You answer to the city manager, you answer to the
Mayor in my
community,
case. Yeah.
or the mayor and the community. Everybody has a boss, right? Um, so when we talk about, well, this leader, this chief needs to support us and needs to give us this and give us that, we also have to understand that they have a boss too, just like you do, right?
Yep.
And here's where I have a problem is when we expect our chief to go out on a limb, right, to support us. Yet we really offer them very little support, right? The chief, but we expect them to go out on a limb and support us. And what we never take into consideration, and this was something that I finally I realized later in my career, right? But is they have a family, they have a pension, they have needs, right? And what happens when they lose that, right? We're all worried about them taking care of us, but would I ask you, Tom, to go throw your job, your family's future on the line for me? Is that fair for me to do that?
Hmm.
Right? I mean,
Well,
because I
well,
wouldn't I
it,
wouldn't
it,
want you to ask me to do that.
that's a great point. I want to expand on that even worse because there's a perspective I think that you're not hitting is that if I go and do something while you're asleep as a sergeant, as the chief, are you going to lose your job?
Oh, wow.
No, you're not.
That's
But if
right.
I'm at home
Wow.
asleep and some officer does certain things, not everything they do is going to potentially make a chief lose their job, but there are things that they can do that will make me lose my job while I'm at home asleep.
Mhm.
That is so
So,
true.
I mean, what I wish that I would have understood as a younger, because I did not give, you mentioned it earlier, I did not give my chiefs grace when they were talking about different things. I was out there acting a fool, getting in trouble all the time. One of those decisions that I made, had it gone a little bit different, could have cost my chief his job,
Mhm.
and the man didn't even know I was out there doing it. So you know, again, I love my cops. I've told them, and I mean it, that I will go drive a semi truck if I have to defend them. If they're right, I'm not going to defend somebody that's not right. But if they're right and they're being maligned, I will defend them and lose my job over it, and I will never look back. But the that sometimes it feels like it's not the other way around.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I know not every chief feels the way I do, but or maybe they feel the way I do, but they don't feel empowered to to do it. I don't know, but I certainly don't want to malign any chiefs out there. That's not the point of what I'm saying. But officers oftentimes are like, well, the chief doesn't care. And I'm telling you, I've not met a chief, and I've met hundreds of them that I would say doesn't care about the people that they work for. And that's the way I phrase it. They don't work for me, I work for them. Um, doesn't mean I get it right all the time, but my heart is usually in the right place, except with my empathy button.
Well,
That's
okay.
me
So now
today.
that you said that, and that brings us to a topic that we had discussed that I think is important and I want to talk about it, right?
Uh,
Is your agency had an incident recently that was very impactful for your agency. I mean, I'm telling you that there's no other way to describe it. Okay.
yeah,
Um, and kind of give us a little background on just the very clear, nothing that we shouldn't be discussing, right? But just on
yeah.
what happened. And then give me a moment to ask you a question. Okay.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So March 18th of this year, we had officers that were looking for this guy that we wanted on I can't remember now whether it was actual homicide warrant or attempted murder. And the One of our guys gets a tip that this person is over at this location, and the patrol officers respond. The first officer that gets there, I think they found 60 rounds in his car. He ends up getting a graze wound to the back of the head. It luckily it didn't kill him. He still has a lot of issues that he's dealing with from that wound. Then we had another group of officers responding. Obviously, I mean, it was. I mean, to you can't describe how crazy that initial encounter was. And for him to have only been hit once is just a miracle. So anyway, officers are responding during the course of this response. And I don't want to get into too much detail
Right.
because these are their
Absolutely.
stories, not mine. But we had another sergeant get shot he was a SWAT sergeant, incredible dude, just a freaking great guy. All these are great guys, but he got shot 3 times in the femur, in the right femur, and 2 times in the left arm. And Then during the course of the thing, and I may have gotten the order of events a little bit twisted.
That's all
It's
right.
kind of
It's not
blurry.
really the event order that
Yeah,
I'm worried
and we
about.
had another officer, captain, who was I believe he was patrol captain at the time. He's now in charge of our narcotics, our special investigations division. He got shot through the back of the neck and out the face. And luckily, he was back to work. I don't know, very shortly afterwards. I mean, just a amazing recovery, and amazing how all of these things happened and they didn't get killed. I mean, the guy was firing a 223, which is an unstable round anyway, and for it to just cause I mean, certainly I'm not downplaying the severity of the injuries,
No,
but
but it's
the to cause the limited amount of damage that it really ended up causing is pretty incredible. And this all happened, I don't know, I think it was about 6 p.m. I was at home building a makeup table for my youngest daughter when I got the phone call, and it's just difficult to even understand what that feels like, when you get that call as a chief. And certainly it doesn't feel like it felt for them. But, in the course of my time as chief, we've had 5 officers shot. And It's just been, I mean, I, the personal toll that's taken on me, is pretty difficult to explain. I mean, I tell my guys all the time, and I'm not trying to be weird, but I love my officers. So
okay. So and so that's why I wanted you to give me an opportunity to kind of ask you a question and interject a couple things here. So you talked to this point earlier about how you say chiefs love they do care about their officers, right?
absolutely,
And that's obvious. I mean, I'm looking at your face right now and I can see it, right? And again, I'm sorry. I didn't mean, we never want to open up any
that's okay.
wounds.
Sorry.
Um, That's why I'd asked you, make sure that you were okay with
This
this
is why I don't
video.
understand why I'm so intimidating.
Well, me neither, but uh, that's because I know the real Chris, right? But here's the thing. Um, when that moment happened, right? You did a couple of things that I will tell you impressed the hell out of me, to the point where I had to talk about it with other people and share this with connections and stuff, because you did a couple of things that was very impressive to me, and impactful to me. And I want to ask you a question about those. Okay. So when this happened, and you obviously got the information. You were obviously concerned about your officers, right? And you went out. One of the big things in leadership that I teach and that I think is important is it's a leadership, what we call a leadership trait that's never mentioned. Okay, and anybody in academia who talks about leadership, they have all these lists of traits and stuff, and we always ask people what's a good leadership trait, or what are the best leadership traits. And one of them that's never mentioned is being present. Okay. Being present in that moment and being present after that moment. Right. And I think you personified that. So you responded to to the hospital and you met with your officers, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. My wife came with me too. So yeah.
so let me ask you a question. When that happened, what was as a leader, okay, what was going through your mind?
Yeah, a couple things. Well, you know, they say in the military the first reports from the battlefield are never right. And that and actually until you asked that question, I didn't even think about it that way. But the information we got initially is that one of my officers and two deputies had gotten shot. So I'm at the hospital and I got there right as the first officer was arriving. And he's the one that got shot in the ricochet or the skimming round to the back of his head. And I'm in there and he's talking to me and I'm like, okay, well, he's talking, he's conscious, he's complaining about some pain and stuff like that, but he seems to be as okay as that as you can be.
Right, right.
And I'm sitting there, and one of my other officers had come to the hospital either with him or right about the same time, I can't remember. And she was telling me that two deputies got shot. So I'm there about 20 or 30 minutes, maybe, I don't know, time's all distorted. I was there for a bit, and all of a sudden I see a gurney going by, and there's my patch. And I'm like, it took me like, I was expecting to see a sheriff's deputy patch, because I heard them coming in, and then I see this patch, and I'm like, that's my guy. So I go over there, and it was the captain that had been that had been um, shot through the face. And a minute later, the sergeant comes in, and I'm just like trying to put all this together. It literally, I think it took me almost a minute to understand that two more of my guys got shot. So I'm sitting there and I'm trying to figure it out, and I felt like shit because I thought I should be there. Sorry,
No,
You're good.
at the scene trying to get this asshole that I shot my cops. Um, so it's hard for me to think that me being at the hospital uh, is being present, because I felt like I should have been out there trying to get that little asshole. But I think I was where I was supposed to be, despite how I feel about it. And we stayed there at the hospital. My captain had to be transported up to Springs for some nerve issues, and stuff like that. But that part went well, and you know but I still regret. I still have some, like I think most cops do, when stuff like that happens. If you're stuck on another call and you hear all this stuff going, a kind of call you can't leave, you feel like you're a failure to your friends.
Hmm.
So yeah. And I think
so
The thing that guys don't understand, and I know that the you forgot where you came from kind of a mentality about Chiefs, but most of us haven't forgot where we came from, and we want. I'll be honest with you, if I could start over, I would do it in a heartbeat. But that's where I struggle with that whole thing.
Okay. And so I would challenge anybody who sees this, right, to say that there's a that the leadership, the chief doesn't care, right? And this is just such a powerful point for why we need to show as much grace to the leadership as the leadership should, show to the officers. So I think that we drove that home. But I'm going to take this a little step further, okay? So afterwards, we've done this incident, just everything's there. You did something that was extremely unique, all right? Is you stood up for your officers, not just in a press release with, this is going on and, we'll give you information. You stood up not just to in your city what's going on, you stood up for the state. Talk about that.
Yeah, well, the little asshole that shot my cops was on parole at the time that he did it and should have been in prison. And that just made me even angrier. And so when we wanted to do a press conference because in our community, clearly, and it would be in almost any community, the three officers getting shot in one incident is a big deal,
Hmm.
and it damn well ought to be. So I didn't want to just put out a press release. I wanted to bring attention to the causes of this violent crime that our cops are facing because we're rearresting the same violent people over and over and over and over again, and that's just not fair to our cops. So I wrote a speech that it's funny. My mayor's awesome. She's very supportive, and so I wrote this statement and I gave it to her as we were waiting to go downstairs to do this press conference. And I said, you might want to look this over and make sure you're okay with it. And she looked it over, and as I said, I think it's pretty aggressive. And she said, after she read it, she goes, well, I thought it would be worse. And I'm thinking, damn, I should have showed it to her about an hour ago so I could go back and make it more to the point. Because I think she would have let me. And so I went down there and basically, placed blame where it is on the steps of the legislature and told them that I was tired of this. And I don't remember exactly what all I said, but it really infuriated me. And I was like, at some point, I'm done. I am done sitting around watching this shit happen and nobody saying anything about it. And so I did. I got a little bit of recognition from it, and that's not why I did it. I said it earlier. I'm just a dude playing a dude, pretending to be another dude. I don't, I've done some podcasts, and they're like, "Well, do you have anything you want to say?" And I'm like, "No, I'm not doing this because I got a book to sell or something."
Right.
And that's how I feel. I mean, I think, and that goes back to my first point about leadership. If you're going to take this job, well, first off, I had a really wise assistant chief from Irving, Texas, one time, and I feel bad because I cannot remember his name. And he gave us, we were in an internal affairs class, and me and my buddy Charlie were in that class together as captains. And he gave us some very good advice that I ignored. He said, "Don't become chief if you need the job." And what that means is if you have to have the job to put a roof over your family's head or put food on the table, you will. I don't think I'm not accusing chiefs of compromising their ethics because compromising ethics is different than not speaking up.
Yes.
Mhm.
It doesn't mean you don't ethically disagree with what's happening, but you're not having the testicular fortitude to speak up. And a lot of reasons is because I gotta pay for my kids' college, or I've gotta, put a roof over my family's head. And if I lose my job, I won't get my pension for another 9 years. Which is why if you're on the pension still, or not within a year or two or three of getting your pension, you probably should really think long and hard about whether you want to be chief or not. I'm not saying you can't be, and you can't be a damn good one, but so I finally just got to the point where I said, you know what? If I get fired, I don't care. I'll go drive a semi truck. I really do not care. Of course, I think I have some better marketable skills, and no offense to our semi truck drivers out there, but I think I could probably do a different type of line of work if I got fired here. But I'm done. I'm done not saying what I think. And sometimes I don't get it right when I say it, but our state right now in Colorado is going down the wrong track as it goes towards accountability to criminals, and it has got to change. The citizens of this state need to stand up and do what is right. And what is right is accountability. We talked about it with our officers. Why is it that my cops are the only ones that have to be held accountable? I have cops. If you use force that a chief deems as excessive, and you lose your post certification for a year, and that's not fair. There now, I'm not talking about force where we've created, caused serious bodily injury because of the excessive force, or God forbid killed somebody because of the excessive force. I'm talking about I mean, I can't even think of an example, but there's no grace for my cops. But we worry about whether some mope that committed a crime is going to lose his job because he stays in jail for 3 days. Um, what what the hell is going on? That is unacceptable. And I, as a chief, am not going to lay down and say I'm good with that. I am not, because that is not right. We do not live in a zero defect world. Absolutely. If an officer uses excessive force that doesn't result in serious bodily injury or death, they should absolutely be disciplined. They should absolutely be retrained. They are not disposable, though, like this state wants them to be. We are living in a world, you throw everything away. Your garbage disposal goes out. You don't go I remember as a kid, your alternator goes out. You could go buy a kit and rebuild your alternator. No, you just chuck them in the trash and go buy a new one now, or you take it for the core or whatever. But we're not disposable. My cops are not freaking disposable. And until this state gets its head out of its ass, it's going to continue to be a problem. How we have, you have to have a bond in 48 hours. What kind of lunacy is that? What kind of example does that set? What kind of deterrent is that when you're out of jail before my cop's report is done? Um, you
Well, but
know,
here's the interesting part about that, Chris, is what you just said is they have to have a bond within 48 hours. But one of your officers, okay, ends up committing or engaging in what we consider excessive force, right?
right,
And when I talk about that, excessive force it's objectively unreasonable. If it's objectively unreasonable, it's excessive. That's just the bottom line. Okay.
right,
But it may have been inadvertent, but it's still unreasonable, right?
right, right,
So, a mistake of the mind, not the heart, right?
right,
But they don't get the benefit of they can come back to work in 48 hours until this thing draws down, it's concluded.
right.
They don't get that grace, right?
No,
They're put on administrative leave, and in a lot of those cases, that'll go to unpaid, you know,
right.
if
Well, and
it's
here's the
fairly
thing,
clear
though.
cut.
As a chief, think about this. How do you keep a cop on the books that can't work for a year?
Yeah.
You know what I
Mhm.
mean? So it's really a career ender. Um,
Yes.
Mhm.
and then who's going to hire that guy?
Right.
And that's not fair. That's not where I want to be. You make a mistake because of the heat of the moment, or because of you make a stupid mistake. You do something stupid, and
Exactly.
and it costs you your job. You tell me one other career field where that's happening. And I said it, I think the day of the press conference. My cops, our cops, are the only people that have to have every second of their freaking day scrutinized by video. Uh, Okay, well, how come surgeons don't have to wear cameras when they go in there to freaking hack off the wrong leg, or whatever? I mean, good God, more people die from medical malpractice than they do at the hands of an officer. But you don't see them wearing cameras.
You don't
What
see
about all these?
politicians wearing them
I
when they're
was just
making
going to say that.
decisions.
You don't see these politicians wearing cameras for all these backroom deals that they make and all this other crap. But they sure are really good at telling other people how they're failures, and then making excuses for the wrong people. I am an absolute believer that you commit a crime, your butt should be in jail.
Oh yeah.
Now, the length of time, we can have a discussion about that, and I don't even know that it's up to me to even input what happens on that end of it. But you should go to jail. And when I started as a cop down here in Pueblo, when you broke the law, your ass went to jail. And if you got caught after 2 o'clock on Friday, guess what? You didn't go home until you saw the judge on Monday.
Yeah.
And I can tell you right now, there's a lot of people that thought twice about whether they were going to do something stupid that weekend because they knew that they wouldn't be able to go party. They would be sitting in the pokey. And I'm telling you right now, until this state gets back to a stage where that's the way we do things, we are not going to see a massive change in what's happening. Even when California is even going, oh, hold up a minute, I think we got this wrong. And Colorado's like, no, no, you just didn't know what you were doing. We got a better way. I mean, what the hell?
Mm-hmm.
It's crazy.
It is. And
Um,
there you go. But that's what I'm talking about, folks. That's that right there is leadership courage. That's administrative courage. That is taking yourself. And this is what officers need to understand. And this is why officers sometimes got to give leadership that grace that that we just don't recognize we're not doing, right? Is
yeah,
because you did exactly that. You took that administrative courage. And I will tell you, you going out there and doing what you did, right? It made a big impact on the public, right? But you put yourself on the line to do that. You really did. And um, how many of our officers, not just in your department, but in Colorado, recognize that?
yeah. I
And
mean,
hopefully a lot more after this.
After this,
yeah.
a lot more, and that's why that's why I'm proud to be your friend, by the way.
Thanks, brother.
So,
Appreciate it.
but I appreciate your talking about that incident. And again, it was clearly something that was very personal to you, which is also goes towards, leadership is not, they don't operate in a bubble, you know, but that's being present. And when I talk about being present, I don't mean you have to physically be standing right there. Being present is being present in your state of mind, your state of emotion, and your state and the status of your actions, right? That's being present.
Yeah,
Knowing what's going on in the hearts and minds of your officers, in the hearts and minds of your community, right? And what's important to them, and what's detrimental to them,
right.
and that's what you did.
Well, thanks, man. I appreciate it.
And I'd have to say too is one of the things, because I kind of, to go back to the incident for a quick second, is that you know I'm assuming that was still an active scene when you went to the hospital and that
Yeah,
type of thing. And however it was resolved, I mean, the reality is, and I've seen this myself before, is if a chief shows up while it's still an active incident, that can absolutely change the decision-making process of the subordinates, especially if it's, your captain or whoever's the incident commander at that time. It could change their decision-making process, which may not allow the guys that need to take care of business to take care of business. So I think you made the right decision by going to the hospital, because you have guys under you that you trust to handle that situation. And I think that you being at the hospital is probably meant more to those cops that were injured than it did for you to go to the scene.
And it sent a better message: is you trust the people below you.
well, and I do, but being a SWAT guy,
I
Yeah,
know,
I
I
hear you.
know, and it's a hard thing to do, but you
I
did
hear
it.
you.
That's
yeah,
that fortitude. That's that,
okay,
you know, sometimes we don't get to do what we want.
yeah,
Sometimes we have to
yeah. I say
do.
that all the time, so I guess yeah, I should listen to my own advice. And still, you know how it is. I mean,
I
people
do.
can tell you that that's what you should have done, and you still feel like
Oh yeah.
so. But I appreciate it, guys. Thank
Well,
you.
thanks, Chris, for being on. You taking the time to do this with us. This was really something that we've been wanting to do with you for a while, and now that we've
Yeah,
gotten the time, uh, that you've actually given us the time to do it. You've you've blessed us peons with your presence.
Yes, whatever, whatever.
But again, this was such a great conversation. You bring a lot of insight. I think this is going to be one of those things that officers, when they, and not just officers, I'm thinking anybody, first responders, but I'm thinking the community too, when they view this, it gives them a different perspective and a different light of what we do. And I think that's very important. So I want to thank you for that. And
Yeah,
Thanks
if
for
I
the
was younger, I'd come
opportunity.
work for you.
yeah,
All right.
yeah,
Well,
that'll test
we
your
are hiring.
leadership. That'll test
We
your
are
Yeah,
leadership.
hiring.
that'll.
I'm telling you.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
I hope
I
so.
might be the reason that you would have to leave.
Yeah.
Chief.
Well, and it's
Yeah.
funny. I mean, as a chief, you still have those guys, and I have to remind myself because I get mad. I'm like, what are they doing? And I gotta, Chris, that was you 25 years ago. So just chill.
There you go. There
So
you go.
yeah. So I mean, maybe there's some good that came out of me being a little punk when I was a young cop.
Well, yeah,
There you
it
go.
helps.
All right. Well, that's our
Thanks, guys.
episode, guys. Want to thank you for listening, and you can tune in to us. Every week we'll have a show dropping, and Chris will be dropping soon here. And thanks again.
Yep. See ya.